What does democracy really mean? Is democracy simply about voting and choosing a government, or is there something much deeper behind it? In this part, we are going to go beyond the simple definition of democracy and discover how democratic ideas developed in India, going back to early traditions of collective decision making and consultation. So instead of just memorizing what democracy means, let's understand the ideas, values, and principles that make democracy work. Let's begin. The big questions. How has the idea of democracy evolved over time and shaped our understanding of it today? So, when we hear the word democracy, we usually think of people choosing their representatives and having a say in how the country is governed. But here is the interesting part. Did democracy always look the way it does today? That is exactly what this question wants us to explain. In this chapter, we are going to travel back in time and discover how ideas of collective decision making and participation existed in early India. Next is, what are the different forms of democracy and how are they practiced in India and other parts of the world? So, we already know that democracy means people have a role in decision making. But does every democratic country function in exactly the same way? Not necessarily. This question is asking us to explore the different forms of democracy and understand how each form works in practice. Third question, what are the essential features of a democracy and how do they extend beyond government institutions? So, we already know that democracy is a form of government, but is democracy only about elections, political parties, and government institutions? This question wants us to look deeper. In this part of the chapter, we are going to learn about the essential principles that make a democracy work, such as popular sovereignty, rule of law, fundamental rights, separation of powers, accountability, and transparency, and a multi-party system. Fourth question, what are the challenges faced by Indian democracy? So, we have seen that democracy gives citizens rights, participation, and a role in decision making. But does that mean democracy always works perfectly? No, democracy also faces challenges. In this part of the chapter, we will look at some of the challenges that can affect the health and effectiveness of Indian democracy. Let's recall. We have learned in previous grades that democracy is a form of government in which the source of power and authority lies with the citizens of the country who elect their representatives through free and fair elections. Democracy is founded on the principles of freedom, equality, justice, rights, and duties, ensuring that citizens have the right to vote, express their opinions, and participate in the decision-making processes. So, we have already learned in previous grades what democracy means. In a democracy, the ultimate power and authority belongs to the citizens. People exercise this power by electing their representatives through free and fair elections. But democracy is not just about voting. It is based on important principles such as freedom, equality, justice, rights, and duties. These principles ensure that citizens can vote, express their opinions, participate in decision making. So, in simple words, democracy is a system in which people are not just governed, they also have a role in deciding who governs them and in participating in the decision making process. This is the basic understanding of democracy that we will build upon as we move through the chapter. India is the world's largest democracy with a population of over 140 crore and a voter base of over 96.8 crore in 2024. India, that is Bharat, represents the largest participatory democracy where people choose their government by electing their representatives. Our democracy serves as a beacon of hope and an example for the rest of the world. However, like all democracies, India also faces certain challenges, some of which we will examine later in this chapter. So now let's see what democracy looks like in our own country. India is the world's largest democracy. And India has a population of over 140 crore. And in 2024, it had over 96.8 crore registered voters. But the important point is not just the number of voters. India is described as a participatory democracy because its people participate in choosing their government. Citizens elect their representatives, and through these representatives, they take part in the process of governing the country. So, when we say participatory democracy, remember that it means people actively take part in the democratic process, especially by choosing their representatives through elections. And our democracy serves as a beacon of hope and an example for the rest of the world. What does beacon of hope mean here? A beacon is something that gives light and helps guide others. So, when India's democracy is described as a beacon of hope, it means that India's experience with democracy can give hope and inspiration to people and countries around the world. However, we should not think that being a democracy means that there are no problems. Like all democracies, India too faces certain challenges. We will study some of these challenges later in the chapter. A constitution plays a crucial role in safeguarding the rights of the people in a democracy. In India, democratic principles are guided by the Constitution of India, which was adopted on 26 November 1949 and came into force on 26 January 1950. The Constitution not only guarantees but also protects the fundamental rights of all citizens. It ensures that no citizen is discriminated against on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. It also encourages active citizen participation in democratic processes at the national, state, and local levels through elections. So, we have been talking about democracy and how citizens have rights and role in governing the country. But there has to be a framework that protects these rights and guides how the country is governed. That framework is called the Constitution. So, what is a Constitution? A Constitution is the fundamental set of rules and principles according to which a country is governed. It lays down how the government should function and protects the rights of its citizens. In India, our democratic principles are guided by the Constitution of India. It was adopted on 26 November 1949 and came into force on 26 January 1950. Now, why is the Constitution so important in a democracy? One major reason is that it guarantees and protects the fundamental rights of citizens. For example, it ensures that a citizen cannot be discriminated against on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. But the Constitution does more than protect our rights. It also encourages citizens to actively participate in democracy. How? Through elections. Citizens participate in democratic processes at the national, state, and local levels by electing their representatives. So, when we put the whole idea together, Constitution guides democracy, protects citizen rights, prevents discrimination, enables citizen participation. That is why the Constitution is so important to the functioning of Indian democracy. However, it is important to understand that the democratic ethos in India did not emerge suddenly. Rather, it evolved through a long historical process. In this chapter, we will explore the genesis and development of democratic ideas in India. We will also deepen our understanding of democracy by examining its meaning, key features, and various practices associated with it in India and around the world. So, when we think about democracy in India today, we might feel that it is something that came into existence only in modern times. But that is not the case. The democratic ethos in India did not emerge suddenly. It evolved through a long historical process. In other words, ideas and practices connected with democracy developed gradually over a long period of time. Here, the word ethos means the ideas, values, and way of thinking that shape a society. And we will also look at democracy more closely. What democracy means, what its key features are, and how democratic practices are followed in India and in other parts of the world. So, the big idea here is democracy in India has a history And understanding that history helps us understand democracy today. Tracing democratic traditions from early times. The idea of democracy has been a part of the Indian ethos since early times. In the previous chapter, we read about assemblies of the Vedic period such as Sabha, Samiti and Vidata that involved collective decision making. We also read about the functioning of the early republican states, Ganas and or Sanghas. Thus, from the earliest times, the king was not an independent ruler but rather worked in consultation with assemblies, ministers and officers of various capacities. So, let's go back to early India. When we think of democracy, we usually think of people having a role in making decisions. Interestingly, we can find ideas like this in India from very early times. You may remember from the previous chapter that during the Vedic period, there were assemblies called Sabha, Samiti and Vidata. These assemblies were involved in collective decision making. In simple words, important decisions were involved a group of people rather than being left entirely to one person, that is king. And there were also early republican states known as Ganas or Sanghas. And what about the king? The king was not completely free to make decisions on his own. He worked in consultation with assemblies, ministers and officers. So even in these early times, we can see the importance of discussion, consultation and collective decision making. That is why these early practices are considered part of India's democratic traditions. A verse, figure 6.1 from the Aikyamatya Suktam of the Rig Veda emphasizes the importance of collective thinking, shared discussion and unity of purpose. The values expressed in this verse help us understand that democratic principles such as consultation, consensus, and shared responsibility have deep roots in India's intellectual and cultural traditions. So, before we connect it to democracy, let's understand what the verse is actually saying. It says, their counsel is one and the same, their assembly is one, their mind is one, and their intention together is one. The verse is describing a group of people who come together with a common purpose. Their counsel or advice and thinking is united. Their assembly is united and their intention is shared. Then comes the idea of a common offering. The speaker says that the offering is being made on behalf of all of them. So, the overall picture is of people coming together, thinking together and working towards a shared purpose rather than each person working separately. Now that we have understood what the verse is saying, let's connect it to the idea being explained here. The verse emphasizes three things: collective thinking, shared discussion and unity of purpose. What does that actually mean? Imagine people facing an issue that concerns the whole group. Instead of everyone thinking and acting separately, they come together, discuss their ideas and try to work towards a common purpose. This is where the connection with democracy becomes clear. Democracy also depends on people sharing their views, discussing matters and taking decisions together. They may begin with different opinions, but through discussion, they can try to reach an agreement. That is the idea of consensus. Consultation is taking others' views before deciding. Consensus here is reaching a common agreement. Shared responsibility means that people share responsibility for what they decide and do together. The important point is that these ideas have deep roots in India's intellectual and cultural traditions. The verse gives us an early example of ideas that are also important in a democracy today. The functioning of the Bauddha Samghas, a monastic community established by Gautama Buddha, also reflects India's democratic traditions. The Samgha encouraged debate and discussion, and its members could choose their leader and make decisions through voting, demonstrating collective decision making. So this is also another interesting example from early India. The Bauddha Samgha was a monastic community established by Gautama Buddha. And what is interesting is how the members of the Sangha made decisions. They were encouraged to debate and discuss matters. So, different views could be considered before a decision was made. But discussion was not the only way members participated. They could also choose their leader and make decisions through voting. So the members were not simply expected to accept whatever one person decided. They had a role in choosing their leader and in making decisions that affected their community. That is what makes this example important here. It shows collective decision making. People taking part in decisions through discussion, choice, and voting. So the Bauddha Samghas give us another example of democratic traditions in early India. Over the long passage of time, invasions by foreign invaders disrupted the political and social fabric of some parts of the country. By the 19th century, the British had colonized most parts of the Indian subcontinent. Foreign rule altered political structures and limited people's participation in their governance. However, the long struggle for independence from British colonial rule revived and strengthened democratic ideas among the people. So, we have just seen that in early India, people could be involved in discussion, consultation, and collective decision making. But India's political history did not remain the same forever. Over many centuries, foreign invasions changed the political and social situation in different parts of the country. Eventually, by the 19th century, the British had colonized most of the Indian subcontinent. Now, think about what happens when a country comes under foreign rule. The people of that country are no longer the ones who control the government. The British changed the existing political structures and people's opportunity to participate in governing themselves became limited. But something important happened during this period. People began to struggle against British colonial rule. And this struggle was not only about ending foreign rule, it also helped revive and strengthen democratic ideas among Indians. So look at the change. People had traditions of participation. Foreign rule reduced their participation. The freedom struggle brought the idea of self-government strongly back into people's minds. Figure 6.2, members of the Constituent Assembly. So these are the people who came together in the Constituent Assembly to draft India's constitutions. They had the responsibility of discussing and preparing the constitution that would provide the framework for governing the newly independent country. So now let's understand how they approached this task and what kind of constitution they wanted to create. Before India attained independence in 1947, the Constituent Assembly was formed in 1946 to draft a constitution for the country. As studied in earlier grades, it took the Assembly 2 years, 11 months and 18 days to draft the world's longest written constitution. Apart from the indigenous democratic traditions, the global spread of democratic values also influenced the Constituent Assembly's debates, CAD contributing to the creation of a robust, flexible, transformative and responsive constitution. So, the struggle for independence had strengthened the idea that Indians should have the right to govern themselves. But once India was moving towards independence, an important question came up. How would this new country be governed? India needed a set of basic rules and principles to guide the country. So, even before independence in 1946, the Constituent Assembly was formed to draft the constitution. Writing a constitution for a country as large and diverse as India was a huge task. The Constituent Assembly took 2 years, 11 months and 18 days to complete it. The result was the world's longest written constitution, and the members of the Constituent Assembly were not starting completely from zero. Remember, the democratic traditions we have already seen: consultation, collective decision making, and shared responsibility. These were part of India's own traditions. And at the same time, democratic values were also spreading in different parts of the world. These ideas influenced the discussions and debates of the Constituent Assembly. So, when the constitution was being created, both sources of ideas came together. India's own democratic traditions plus democratic values from around the world. These ideas contributed to a constitution that was designed to robust, flexible, transformative, and responsive. The CAD reflects the members' belief that the Constitution should not be a rigid legal code but a dynamic document capable of evolving through lawful amendments without compromising its fundamental values. Accordingly, while making provisions for establishing democratic institutions and processes that uphold liberty, equality, justice, and fraternity, the Constitution also provides for amendments under Article 368. This ensures that the Constitution remains flexible and responsive to the changing socio-political needs. So, when the Constituent Assembly was preparing the Constitution, its members had to think about something important. Should the Constitution be a fixed set of rules that can never change? They did not want it to be like that. The Constitution should not be a rigid legal code. Here, rigid means very fixed and difficult or impossible to change. And a legal code means a set of laws and rules. So, a rigid legal code would be a set of rules that cannot easily be changed even when the needs of society change. So, the members believed that the Constitution should be a dynamic document. Dynamic here means that it should be capable of evolving or changing with time. Why is this important? A country and its society do not remain exactly the same forever. Social and political needs can change with time. Therefore, the Constitution needs to have a lawful way of adapting to these changes. This is possible through amendments. An amendment means a formal change made to the Constitution according to the procedure provided by law. The Constitution provides for this process under Article 368. But there is an important condition. The Constitution can evolve through lawful amendments without compromising its fundamental values. And there are 4 fundamental values: liberty, equality, justice, and fraternity. So there is a balance here. The Constitution can change when necessary, but its fundamental values must be protected. This is why the Constitution can remain flexible and responsive to changing socio-political needs. Here, socio-political simply means related to both society and politics. So, when you hear the Constitution is a dynamic document, understand it as the Constitution can adapt to changing social and political needs through lawful amendment while continuing to protect its fundamental democratic values. Figure 6.3, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Chairman of the Drafting Committee of the Constitution of India. So, what does drafting committee mean? We already know that the Constituent Assembly was responsible for preparing the Constitution. The drafting committee was the committee that worked on preparing the draft of the Constitution. And Dr. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairman, which means he headed this committee. Principles of democracy. A thriving democracy rests on certain non-negotiable principles. Let us study the essential principles of democracy that are upheld in India through various provisions of the Constitution. So far, we have understood how democratic ideas developed and how they found expression in the Constitution of India. But now let's ask a more basic question. What actually makes a democracy a democracy? Now we are going to learn about the basic principles that every democracy needs. A democracy cannot work properly without these principles. That is why they are called non-negotiable, meaning they are essential and cannot be compromised. In India, these principles are also protected through different provisions of our Constitution. A provision is a specific rule or arrangement included in the Constitution. So, the Constitution contains different provisions that protect and support these essential principles of democracy. So, now we are going to learn what these principles are and how the Constitution of India protects them. Let's begin with the first principle, popular sovereignty. In a democracy, the ultimate source of power lies with the people. Thus, the idea of popular sovereignty means that the state derives its authority from the people. So, we already know that in a democracy, people choose their representatives, but There is a deeper idea behind this. Who actually has the power in a democracy? The answer is the people. The phrase ultimate source of power means the final or highest source from which the government gets its authority. So, what is authority? Authority means the official power or right to make decisions and govern. So, when we say the ultimate source of power lies with the people, we mean that the government does not get its power simply because it is the government. Its authority comes from the people. This idea is called popular sovereignty. Popular means related to the people. Sovereignty means supreme or highest authority. Therefore, popular sovereignty means that the state gets its authority from the people. So remember, in a democracy, the people are the ultimate source of political power. A government elected through free and fair elections formulates policies and implements laws. Every citizen 18 years of age and above has the right to vote through a secret ballot. This right is known as the universal adult franchise. Citizens exercise their right to vote to elect governments and representatives. You will read more about elections in the next chapter. So now we know that the people are the ultimate source of power in a democracy. But there is an important question. How do people actually use this power? One important way is by voting in elections. In a democracy, people choose their representatives through free and fair elections. Free means that citizens are able to make their choice without being forced. And fair means that the election process is conducted fairly. The government that is elected then formulates policies and implements laws. Now, who has the right to vote? In India, every citizen who is 18 years old or above has the right to vote. This is called universal adult franchise. Let's understand the term. Universal means it applies to all. Adult means citizens who have reached the required adult age. Here, 18 years and above. Franchise means the right to vote. So, universal adult franchise means that every citizen aged 18 and above has the right to vote. The vote is given through a secret ballot. This means that your choice in the election is kept private. Other people do not need to know which candidate you voted for. Through this right to vote, citizens choose their representatives and governments. And notice how this connects to what we have just learned about popular sovereignty. People are the source of power. People vote. People choose their representatives. And elected government gets the authority to govern. The detailed process of elections will be taken up in the next chapter. Next is rule of law. The rule of law is a fundamental principle of any democratic society. It ensures equality before the law and equal protection of the law and establishes that no one is above the law. When laws are violated, disputes are resolved in a court of law through procedures established by law, not by force or personal influence. This prevents misuse of power and protects people's rights. No citizen can be punished without following the procedure established by law. And everyone is provided a fair opportunity to defend their rights against arbitrary action. In this way, the rule of law promotes justice, accountability, and trust in the democratic system. Equality before law. Every individual, irrespective of status, identity, or rank, is treated equally by the law. So now let's understand what equality before law actually means. Imagine that two people come before the law. One may have a high position or status while the other may not. Does the law treat one person or more important simply because of who they are or the position they hold? No. The idea is that every individual is treated equally by the law, regardless of their status, identity, or rank. Here, these words mean, status means a person's position or social standing. Identity, characteristics by which a person is identified. Rank, a person's official or social position compared with others. So, equality before law means that the law does not give someone a special position simply because of their status, identity, or rank. Everyone is equal before the law. Equal protection of law. all persons in similar circumstances shall be treated equally by law without arbitrary discrimination. So this idea is a little different from equality before law. So pay attention to the words similar circumstances. Circumstances means the condition or situation in which a person is placed. So when two or more people are in a similar circumstances, they should be treated equally by the law. For example, if two people are in the same legal situation, the law should not simply favor one person or treat the other differently without a proper reason. Arbitrary means without a proper or reasonable reason. Discrimination means treating people differently or unfairly. Therefore, without arbitrary discrimination means that people in similar circumstances should not be treated differently without a valid reason. So, equality before law means no special status before the law, and equal protection of law means similar circumstances but equal treatment. The two ideas are closely connected, but they are not saying exactly the same thing. Procedure established by law. It refers to a legal principle that stresses on strict adherence to duly enacted and valid laws. This principle is enshrined in Article 21 of the Constitution of India, which states, "No persons shall be deprived of life or personal liberty except according to procedure established by law." Article 21 is one of the fundamental rights given by the Constitution of India. It protects two very important things of a person, life and personal liberty. It says that no person can be deprived of their life or personal liberty except according to the procedure established by law. So, procedure established by law means that if a person's life or personal liberty is to be taken away, the authorities must follow the procedure given by a law that has been properly made and is legally valid. They cannot simply act according to their own wishes. So now we have come to a very important principle of democracy, the rule of law. The basic idea is simple. The law is above everyone. No matter how powerful, wealthy or influential a person may be, no one is above the law. The rule of law is a fundamental principle of a democratic society. Here, fundamental means basic and essential. So, the rule of law is one of the basic principles needed for a democracy to function properly. It also means that everyone should receive equality before the law and equal protection of the law. We have already understood these ideas. People are equal before the law and people in similar circumstances should be treated equally. Now, what happens when someone violates a law? A dispute should not be settled by force, threats, or personal influence. Instead, it should be taken to a court of law where the matter is dealt with according to the procedures established by law. Why is this important? Because otherwise, a powerful person could misuse their position and simply force their decision on someone else. The rule of law helps prevent such misuse of power and protects people's rights. And there is another important protection here. A citizen cannot simply be punished because someone says that they have done something wrong. The proper procedure established by law must be followed, and the person must be given a fair opportunity to defend their rights. Here, arbitrary action means an action taken without a proper or reasonable basis. So, if someone faces an arbitrary action, they should have an opportunity to defend their rights through the proper legal process. And everyone knows that laws will be followed, power cannot be misused, and people will get a fair opportunity to protect their rights. It creates three important things: justice, accountability, trust. Accountability means that people and authorities are responsible for their actions and can be required to explain or answer for them. That is how the rule of law strengthens a democratic system. Next is the fundamental rights. The fundamental rights enshrined in the Indian Constitution play a crucial role in safeguarding the rights, freedom, and dignity of citizens. There are 6 fundamental rights: the right to equality, Articles 14 to 18, the right to freedom, Articles 19 to 22, the right against exploitation, Articles 23 to 24, the right to freedom of religion, Articles 25 to 28, cultural and educational rights, Articles 29 to 30, and the right to constitutional remedies, Article 32. Any violation of these can lead to appropriate legal action, and citizens can seek constitutional remedies under Articles 32 and 226 for the protection and reinforcement of their fundamental rights. These rights are enforceable in courts of law and are indivisible and inalienable, subject to reasonable restrictions in accordance with the procedure established by law. So now we have come to something very important in a democracy, fundamental rights. We have already seen that democracy is not only about choosing a government. A democracy must also protect the rights, freedom and dignity of its citizens. So what are fundamental rights? The word fundamental means basic and essential. Therefore, fundamental rights are the basic rights that are protected by the Constitution. These rights are enshrined in the Indian Constitution. Enshrined means formally included and protected in an important document. The Constitution gives us 6 fundamental rights. Right to equality, Articles from 14 to 18. This protects the idea that people should be treated equally. Right to freedom, Articles 19 to 22. This protects important freedoms of citizens. Right against exploitation, Articles 23 to 24. This protects people from exploitation. Right to freedom of religion, Articles 25 to 28, and this protects freedom in matters of religion. Cultural and educational rights, Articles 29 and 30. These protect certain cultural and educational rights. Right to constitutional remedies, Article 32. This gives citizens a way to seek protection when their fundamental rights are violated. Now, why are these rights so important? They help protect the rights, freedom and dignity of citizens. Here, dignity means the respect and the worth that every person deserves. But suppose someone's fundamental right is violated, does the person just have to accept it? No. The Constitution provides constitutional remedies. A remedy means a legal way of correcting a wrong or protecting a right. So, constitutional remedies are the legal ways provided through the Constitution to protect and enforce fundamental rights. Citizens can seek these remedies under Articles 32 and 226, and these rights are enforceable in courts of law. Enforceable means that these rights are protected by law and can be taken to a court when they are violated. Indivisible means they cannot simply be divided into separate parts and treated as unimportant. Inalienable means they cannot simply be taken away or given up. However, fundamental rights are subject to reasonable restrictions. Here, restriction means a limit and reasonable means that the limit should be fair and justified. So, although citizens have fundamental rights, the exercise of these rights can have reasonable and lawful limits. These restrictions must be imposed in accordance with the procedure established by law. That is, the proper legal procedure must be followed. So with this, we have completed the part 1 of our chapter on democracy. I hope you found it easy to understand. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. We will see you again in our next video. Bye bye.